do to basically fake us into believing that what they're saying is true. And so I came across a book one day. There's a doctor, he's actually a medical doctor. He wrote 2 books. He wrote one called The Grand Experiment, and that was his first book, and it was pretty awesome. The Grand Experiment basically meaning evolution, and that it's, I think he put experiment there because it's not proven. But anyway, Dr. Warner wrote his second book called Living Fossils, and when I sat and took time to read that, I was pretty blown away. So as we look at these, okay, why isn't it advancing? Pointer works. What's going on with the computer? Let me end it and start it back up and see what happens. Okay, so that's a picture of the book. It's Living Fossils, Evolution, The Grand Experiment. When I put together this set of slides, I actually called him and asked permission to use some of the pictures from his book because you can't find some of the pictures he had. But anyway, background on him. In his sophomore year of college, Dr. Carl Warner was challenged by a fellow classmate with these words: "I bet you can't prove evolution." Disturbed by his classmate's somewhat pungent criticism of the theory, Dr. Warner, a biology major at the time, pondered the conversation for some time. From this point, he began his quest for an answer. So, he's looking at this. Number one, he's a biologist, okay? If you ever go to college and you start learning biology, when I went to nursing school, they want to throw evolution in anatomy and physiology, and there's no reason to, because guess what? The anatomy and physiology that a medical person's dealing with is current. So there's no reason to go into it. But see, they want to just make that an issue because it's always going to be an issue. Anyway, if we go through this, driven by his stringent scientific background and exceedingly curious nature. And let me say this, if you're curious, you're going to go and look. Best person to get across, to get to start thinking is one that's curious and looking for the truth. Now, a curious person not looking for the truth, they don't care. But if somebody truly is curious and they're looking for the truth, this is what they'll do, is they'll find the truth and they find God. That's the truth. And so Dr. Warner read and researched every topic he could find on evolution, including paleontology, geology, biology, biochemistry. After 18 years of study, Dr. Warner considered himself ready to begin a series of experiments by which to test evolution. Remember, the challenge was to prove evolution, but you can't. So for the next 20 years, from 1997 to 1917, Dr. Warner traveled to the best museums. Now remember, he's a medical doctor, so he can afford to run all over the world and look at all the best museums. He goes to the best museums, traveled to dig sites around the globe, photographing thousands of original fossils, the actual fossil layers where they were found. Okay, so we have this gentleman that goes around and he's looking into all these things. Natural history museums are full of propaganda. They do so many things to make it so that you believe Darwinism that it's ridiculous. So what he found out while he went into the thing, now if you go into scientific names, you got you've got kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species, and then the official name. Most of the time we just deal with species and genus. So the official name of a human is Homo sapiens. You see that? It says genus is Homo, sapiens is species. So as you go through, if you want to look at a wolf is a canis lupus. A canine is, a dog is a canis familiaris. So if you look at that, you just come across these, look, you're going to get to genus and then species. Now, as we go, this is the interesting thing. As you go and you look at the fossil layer, they sit there and they find something, and if it's different than something else, they name it something else. But look at all the skulls, the variation of skulls on dogs. Is a bulldog a dog?
Yeah.
Do you see that? Do you see that skull right there?
Yeah.
Does that look the same as that dog's skull?
No.
Does it look the same as that dog's skull?
No.
I mean, right there we got 4 different skulls. If we were looking back at, we've never seen that before, we look through, fossils, we can come up with whatever we want. They don't have to be dogs. How do you test rock to see if it's dog? Doc's going to go over the flesh, the tissue that they're finding in fossils now. But before they came across the T-Rex femur bone that they cut in half to get out of the hole because it was too heavy, and found tissue, they didn't think that it was live tissue that they can get DNA from. So without being able to test it, you couldn't have figured that out. By looking at these 4 different heads, we could come to the conclusion that they're not dogs. That one's something other than the other because they don't look the same. So also I want you to look, this is a sassafras leaf. There are how many variations of the sassafras leaf? Variations also occur in plants. Looking closely at the leaves on this page, notice the difference in their shapes, veins, and appearance. Despite these drastic differences, all 5 of these leaves came from the same tree. So you got to think about this now. When scientists get up and they find leaves in the fossil layer, I'm trying to think where one of my leaves are. I think it's over there. But if you go up and you look, there's one that's got a pretty decent leaf. It's from Primeville, Oregon. Actually, Rollin found it. How about that, Rollin? I got your fossil right here. So Rollin found this fossil right here. If you look at it, it's a part of one. But it's a large leaf. They can name it whatever they want. If it looks slightly different or anything is different, they name it something different. Well, if you were to find these leaves coming from the same tree in a fossil record, what are you going to come up with? Are they the same? We don't have to say they're the same, but they are. Because we know now in observation they come from the same tree. So Dr. Green here says, but there's always been a couple of problems with the Big Bang Theory. First, when you squeeze the entire universe into an infinitesimally small but stupendously dense package, at a certain point, our laws of physics simply break down. They just don't make sense anymore. Now remember, he's sitting there talking about putting everything down into a small package. The reason he says that is what do we know about the universe? It's expanding. So if the universe is in a consistent state of expansion, then if it started in this little teeny small nothing, then where's our problem? We have a big problem, you see. So then you sit there and Dr. Gross says the physics formula we use in the Big Bang Theory start giving answers that are nonsensical. We find total disaster. Everything breaks down and we're stuck. Look, these are 2 people that study physics and they're well known and they're sitting there going, if this doesn't work out mathematically. So So we have two people saying, hey, this stuff doesn't work out mathematically. Now we have to start thinking about some things. Such evidence for modern creatures in dinosaur fossil layers don't exist. So what is it saying? Look, nothing we have now existed back then, right? I mean, that's what they're saying. So we get in the dinosaur layers, we're not going to come across certain things. I don't know if you guys noticed, Doc brought this I don't know, poster, I guess you'd call it. It's from the Creation Evidence Museum. And if you look, there's a print here, and there's a footprint. They took an ultrasound to that footprint, and they looked at it, and if this was faked, the pressures from the ultrasound would show different. But it shows consistent with what they expect to find if there was a human footprint and a dinosaur stepped in the footprint. So it's consistent with what they should find. The pressures in the different places are in the right places. So if the footprint is under the dinosaur print, do you think the man walked there first? Do you see what I'm saying? So how can we not have man and dinosaur? We have evidence of it. Do you know that there was a time that you'd go out there and you'd see those two footprints, and they had a sign up that when a three-toed dinosaur was, I think they said the Velociraptor. Do you remember that sign? They used to say that the Velociraptor running at a speed of such and such would make a footprint. Well, how does three toes make five? But they had made that excuse, and it was like everybody's supposed to be that stupid to believe that, you know? And so, look, they come up with all sorts of things to hide the evidence that they don't want you to see. And so, was that a man's footprint? Absolutely, that's a man's footprint, you know? So when you look at it, if we say that, dinosaur fossils, modern creatures are evident in the dinosaur fossils. So museums of natural history are not showing all the fossils found in the same layer with the dinosaurs. Look, when they excavate, if they find something that doesn't fit with what they're saying, they just separate them. They keep the fossil, but they don't put it in the same area. And so as we're going to see, this is why I like this. I like the book that he put, and I just love the thought process because it makes you look. So if you look at this, the Age of Reptile mural in the Peabody Museum at Yale University. Now think about this. The Age of Reptiles. Was there an Age of Reptiles? No. Because reptiles were created when? Day 6. Look, anything that walks on land was created what day? Day 6. That's how it is. Everything that swims and flies was created on which day? Day 5. So when you get down to it, look, now if you want to say that man didn't exist when the birds did, that one day, we had one 24-hour period that the birds could fly around without man swatting at them. That was it. So you get into this, the age of the reptile. Look, in the fossil layer, not only do you find the reptile, right, so the dinosaur or the lizard, but what do you find with it? Mammals, invertebrates. So evolution, animals, plants change over time. If there's no evolution, Warner should find the modern animal and plants with dinosaurs. Think about what I'm saying. If creation is true, then in the fossil layer I should find everything that I should find some stuff that I find now. Why? Because look, it was just flooded. Right? So we start looking at this. Look, rock layers are deposited from the bottom to the top. Right? That makes sense. How do we figure that out? Do you know right now if you took, any good geologist will tell you that the bottom layer of rock, if you look at the Grand Canyon, the Tapete Sandstone's density is denser than the next layer up. So each layer is denser than the other layer. Now, some people say, well, what do you mean by that? Well, because this one weighs more, this is this. No, I'm talking about density. And so if we start looking at that, each layer, if creation is true, we should have densities, right? And they should fall properly. Why? Because of gravity. And so when you start looking at that, you'll start finding that. We don't necessarily find mammals in one layer and dinosaurs in another layer. What we find is on the bottom layer we find what? We find all the smaller stuff. Why? Listen. If Mateo and I, well, not anymore, Mateo will probably beat me now because I'm fat and slow. But if Mateo and Eli are running across the field and a wave's coming in, it's going to bury Mateo first. Think about it. It's going to bury the smaller creatures first, because if you're racing a snail, I can beat the snail. The snail is going to be put on the bottom layer because I'm still, I can jump up a foot. And as it gets around my ankles, I jump up another foot. And as those layers are being put down, I'm going to keep going. What they find too is usually when you find a footprint like that, do you know where you find the dinosaur?
I know.
Upper layers, not lower layers, or same layers. So when you start thinking about that, then the dinosaur was moving, he ends up in an upper layer. Why? Because he's a dinosaur, right? It's going to take a little while to bury him. And if we're looking at a tsunami, that wave is going to carry him up and then splash him down. Well, it's already covered his footprint. And so if you think about that whole thing, if you're out at the beach and a tsunami comes, what are you doing? Watching it? If you're watching it, you ain't that smart. You deserve to be buried. But if you see it coming, what are you going to do? You're going to run. Now, if the wave is strong enough and powerful enough to make it to where you run to, you may get buried. But if they were to find your footprints, you're going to be above your footprints. It's common sense. It makes sense. So the deeper, watch what he says here, the deeper we dig, the further back in time we see. That's what evolution is saying. But that's not true. The deeper we dig, we can go to the survival of the fittest. The deeper we dig, the animal that doesn't have the power to get away gets stuck. So you think about, Doc was talking about the Wyoming and those cool fish. I mean, those fish are, I've got over here, I've got a lot of fish, but I got one place here, I got a shrimp. Look, they all died and got buried in the same place. That's why that one plate he was talking about, he can count fish and get up to 200 and still have more to count. Why? Because they all died at the same time, so they got buried in the same layer. So when we look at that, we have to start understanding that what was buried in that layer. Why is there shrimp stuck in that layer? I got this one. I'll pass this one around. This is from that area. If you look in the middle of these fish, you look at this thing in the middle, and I don't know, Doc, I'm going to give it to you, because tell me what that is. The little dot in the middle. I don't know if it's a folded fish, if it's fish poop, or, it's something. But why is it in there? If we go by the thought process that the smaller thing's going to get stuck before the bigger thing, then it's because of its being able to move and its strength, right? So what's up higher is stronger than the things below, in a sense. And so, a lot of people don't understand, why don't we find a lot of human fossils? Anybody ever wonder that? Why don't we find a lot of human fossils? No, I'm going to tell you the truth. God said he was going to cleanse the earth of the humans. He didn't say the rest of everything. He's getting rid of us. He was wiping us from the face of the earth. And he was just going to keep 8. So you sit there and go, why isn't there a lot of humans in those layers? I think it's because God was making it clear. You know, now some people say they find them. Okay, I don't know if they're Ice Age fossils or they're flood fossils, and I guess they found a few, but you don't find them like you find everything else. You know, and honestly, I'm not going to argue it, but I'm not really sure they're really finding anything human. But it makes sense to me when God says, "Hey, you know, I'm gonna wipe the earth from man because you're so wicked." Well, then He's not going to give us anything to see. So you look at these, look, modern invertebrates, you know, you see this. You look at these invertebrates, the modern invertebrates, and we look at this cricket, and you can see there's a fossil cricket. Now, they are in dinosaur layers. We find them all the time in the dinosaur layers. That picture, the fossil we're passing around right now, that little thing in with the fish, I mean, technically it could be a bee. If you look at the shape of that bee, and you look at that, maybe it's a bee, I don't know. Did you figure out what it was?
Yeah, it's a continuation of a fish with a piece of the trunk that's missing out in the middle. It's part of
Got you.
It's another,
So the fish was probably pointed, we're looking at it down the...
a little piece up here and a little piece, but the part in the middle broke off. It's not there.
But see, that makes sense, though. But I mean, as we look at these things, how are you going to figure out what they are? So then, look at this. Watch this name. Now, this shrimp, obviously, in human hands, is a modern shrimp. If you want to know where to catch this shrimp, just go down to Louisiana. And this, how do you say that? Leptopeneus. They're used to me butchering words. So Leptopeneus setiferus. Notice, the blue is what? Remember when I went back in the beginning, I said we're going to look at genus and species. The blue is the genus. What is a wolf? Genus. Canine. Right? And we get to a dog's genus is canine. Now, we got two shrimp here. I'm not asking you to look at the fossilized shrimp closely, but look at it. Is that not two shrimp? So why aren't they in the same family? Why do we have a different... You see what I'm saying? Why is there a different genus name? We should have a genus name and a species name, and the genus name, even if they're different shrimp, should be the same, though. It still should be the Leptopeneus, or whatever, however you pronounce that. It should still be that, because that below is a shrimp. It's like the dog. If I pull a bulldog skull up here, and I pull a shepherd skull up here, totally different skulls, but guess what? They're still canis, right? They're still dogs. Here, we've got two obvious shrimp, but in the secular world, they want to name the other shrimp a whole different genus to throw you off. Because remember, when you go through a natural history museum, there's one... is it Hayes has the Natural History Museum? Yeah, Hayes has a Natural History Museum. If you go through there, what you'll find is you'll go in and you'll see all the old stuff, and they'll give you all the scientific names. And just pay attention to the scientific names of all the old stuff, like the shrimp. And then go into, as you go through that museum, you go to the modern stuff, and then look at the scientific names. And notice that shrimp are not shrimp. Now you're telling me, anybody who goes shrimp fishing, would you take that fossilized shrimp if it was real and put it in your shrimp bucket? Yes, because it's a shrimp. And if that's the case, think about what I'm saying. If that's the case, then the genus name should be the same. That's what I want you guys to see. And so look, I'm not telling you, I'm not sitting there going, hey, stay away from a natural history museum. Look, they got cool stuff in there. I still like going, even though I got to hear the millions and billions of years and all the bull. Look, they don't know better. But the scientist that named this shrimp knew better. And his whole point was to throw people off, because he wants you to not believe God. So So whether it's a different, now remember what I'm saying, whether it's a different species of shrimp, it's irrelevant. It could still have that species name, but the genus name should still be Leptopeneus. You get what I'm saying? So watch. You look at this. Notice the difference. What's over on that side? Those are spines. I got this awesome rock. I spent a day with a guy, and he kept going, hey, you can't find a whole bunch of those spines all in one place. And we split up during our day. I'm giving Ken a hard time. So last Wednesday, I'm out with Ken, and he's showing me places to go look for fossils. And I didn't bring that particular rock. You remember that rock that I pulled off that side of that hill? So I'll pull this rock off, and I'm going to bring it in the church and lay it out at some point. But it had a whole bunch of spines on all three corners. I mean, there was a ton of them, where he and I have been looking at rocks all day, and we'd have like 2 or 3 spines, but we wouldn't have that massive amount. And so I pulled that thing off, and I go get him, and I said, hey, check this out. And he's like, oh my goodness. You know, I mean, we hit the jackpot on it. It was pretty awesome. But see, if I were to put the scientific name to those spines, then this sea urchin would have to go by the old name, even though these two things are the same sea urchin. If you look at it closely, you can see that they're identical, yet remember, I'm not worried about the species. It could be a slightly different sea urchin, but it's still a sea urchin, so it still should be the Echidarius. Do you see what I'm saying? But what did they do? If you go into the Natural History Museum and you go into the old section where the fossils are, you're going to find a different genus name instead of a species. Remember, you don't worry about the species because, you know, that's what type. I mean, different type of dog is a different type. I mean, but if the canis on the dog should be the same. If it's a canine species, canine genus, then it should fall in, the species can be different. Are you getting what I'm saying? But this doesn't make sense, but this is what they do. So look at this. What is that? I mean, you look at it and it's sea fungus, right? What's the difference between the fungi and the cycolites? Nothing. It's the same exact thing. One's fossilized and one's not. Let me help you out. In biblical timeline, one is probably 4,000 years old and one's today. That's it. Because we have to go by the flood. When did it get buried? It got buried around the flood time. So why is it they have two different... I want you guys to get this in your head. Go and look. That's what they do. So how do you not connect? Number one, they're never sitting next to each other. One's in one part of the museum and one's in the other part of the museum. And then they give you a total different genus and species name. Which the species, like I said, there could be a different species, but it's still under the same genus. So when we study that out and we start looking at that, if remember what he said he was, curious. If you're curious, this doesn't make sense. We have to come to a conclusion. So here he's showing one that he found, right? Same thing. Look at this. Now he's just showing us the genus. Why are we in a different genus? Is that not the same octopus? So look at here. You look at these, last body chambers removed, you start looking at these, here's a real one, here's one not. They're going to have different genus and species. These crabs, that's a crab. Do you know there's only, when you go out, anybody ever go to the East Coast and collect sand dollars? You go to the East Coast, you collect sand dollars. If you notice, a sand dollar on the East Coast is actually more fragile and it's narrower, right? But you go to the West Coast, and in the East Coast, it takes a long time to find a sand dollar. Why? Because they're more fragile. But it's up over there. So if you look up here on this top one, these are all from the Oregon coast. And let me just say, if you like hunting sand dollars, you go there, and most of the shell on the beach is sand dollar. There's almost nothing else. So we're on the East Coast, you're hunting hard for a sand dollar. On the West Coast, you're hunting hard for any other kind of shell. It's just how it works out. But you see those sand dollars, they're tougher. We used to have, we do. So if you look at this sand dollar, if you notice it has little holes in different places. Definite difference between these two sand dollars. But guess what? They're still a sand dollar. This is a fossilized sand dollar. If you take this fossilized sand dollar and you put it up there against those sand dollars, guess what you find out? One's a rock and one's a shell. But they're identical. There's no difference. When I came across this one, I was so happy because we had hundreds of those. And so it was like, man, you can't mess that up. But look, they put different names to them. Why? Because they want you to go in there, and if you're taking notes, listen, if you're taking notes, you're not taking pictures. And you're going to get thrown off because you're taking down what their names are. Well, how can they not be the same genus? What's the difference? These are the things we have to think about as we try to figure out, is evolution true or is God true? Notice I'm saying not creation, I'm saying God. Because God is the one who wrote the scriptures. God is the one who created. And which witness statement are we going with? Notice what I'm saying now. Are we going with a first-person witness statement? What's that witness statement? God, right? Why? Because he was there. Who else was there? Nobody. So when God writes Scripture, he's writing from a first-person witness, where when man writes evolution, he's writing from what? A 15,000 person witness? That he actually doesn't have a witness. He doesn't even have hearsay. He has an idea. He has an imagination. To be honest, he has Tom and Jerry. Right? So look, that's a sponge. It looks like that sponge. But you go in a natural history museum, they're going to give you different. Look at this crab, this horseshoe crab. When you go in, now remember, go in these natural history museums and check it out. Because you're going to find a different genus on every one. And so the horseshoe crab, you're going to find a different genus. I mean, look at that. You're telling me those two pictures of the horseshoe crab and those two fossils of the horseshoe crab aren't a horseshoe crab? But yet you're going to get a different genus. You look at this, it's the same thing, but they want you to believe that they somehow evolved. But that, and this is why this study I'm on is called Living Fossils. We have fossils, and they're still living, right? If they had us to believe everything died and became better. Now remember this, anybody know the first law of thermodynamics? Is it what? No, that's the second law. First law of thermodynamics is in actually chapter 2 of Genesis, where he goes through the creation in chapter 1, and in the first verse of the first verse of the second chapter, it says, and it is finished. First law of thermodynamics is right there. Look, everything created, watch what I'm saying, everything created, so matter and energy, first law of thermodynamics, matter and energy can no longer be created. We have the same amount of matter that we had at the beginning and the same energy. Now the difference is what can we do with that? We can change what that matter is, and we can change the energy. Okay? But we can't create more energy and we can't create more matter. When he said it's finished, there's no more creation. What is creation? Think about this. What is creation? It's making something from nothing. Man never creates, he makes. What is making something? It's taking something that's there and turning it into something else. Do you see what I'm saying? So remember that. Look, we don't create because only God can create. He created something from nothing. But we can make something from something else. And so when you look at this, look, we get that in our head. First law of thermodynamics says there's no more matter and no more energy. It's all been created. Second law of thermodynamics says that it all degrades. So not that there's less energy, but that energy has less ability. Look at, you want to make sure that law is correct? Look at DNA. Why is it in Scripture that when we get to the Levitical law, Moses is told by God in the Levitical law that you cannot mate with your first cousin? Why is it that, think about this, why is it that Abraham could mate with his sister? Because remember, she's a half-sister. What would we see right now if we mated a half-sister? It's corrupted, right? We'd probably have some pretty upset, bad offspring. We'd be missing some chromosomes somewhere. Why? Because the DNA. If as you talk to a scientist that studies DNA, you'll find out that there's a mitochondrial Eve in the DNA that was perfect. And as you follow your way through, what do you find? That it's less perfect. What's happening in the DNA? It's always degrading. So is the second law of thermodynamics correct? Yes. So then how can evolution even happen if a law of science, and this is what I found out, the more laws of science I look at, the more that evolution contradicts the laws of science. So then what is evolution? False science, because it can't even follow its own laws if it was truly science, right? But in creation, does creation follow the first law and the second law of thermodynamics? Absolutely. So notice what I'm doing. I'm showing you these pictures of this live creature and a fossilized creature. They're all the same. You tell me that's not a lobster. What you'll find, though, go and look at the genus at the museums. Remember this, go into the museum and go look at their fossils and write down the names, and then go into the modern part of the museum, of the Natural History Museum, and write down the genus names. And you'll find out that, hey, the shrimp is no longer a shrimp. The lobster is no longer a lobster. I'm sorry, that's still a lobster. If I were back when that thing was going to get buried, it would still go in the pot, and I'm still telling you I'm feeding you lobster. But see, they don't want to do that. They want you to be off. What is that? Is that not a starfish in the fossil? So what you'll find, though, is you check those genuses out. They change every one of them. You've got a snail. You can look on the table and come across a whole bunch of snails in here. The mayfly larva, you find it in the fossil record, the beetle. But they, like I said, watch, they'll come up with a whole different... How is it that dragonfly is not a dragonfly? Do you see what I'm saying? Notice the difference in the name. It's still a dragonfly. So, the grasshopper, is that not a grasshopper? I mean, as you look at these fossils, that's not a hard one to figure out. And when you put the live one next to you, and this is what Dr. Warner found out, is that if evolution is true, and what everybody's saying, that you're not going to find modern living animals in the dinosaur layer, and he's finding these invertebrates in the dinosaur layer, there's a problem. So he goes through, and this goes through the modern reptile fossils are found in the same layers as the dinosaur. So see, first he looks at the invertebrates, and then he goes to the reptiles. So we say, oh, a dinosaur is, well, some people want to say a dinosaur turns into a bird. I don't know how the heaviest beast in the world ever created turns into a bird. And I haven't seen a long-necked bird with a long-necked tail. You know, so you start thinking about it, it's like, this doesn't make sense. You know, how does those deep bone densities turn into, you ever had bird bones? I mean, they are light. Why? Because they fly. That's not a true statement. But what you find is, you'll still find alligators in the fossil record. It's not because they're old dinosaurs. It's because they're still alligators. God said what? If you go into Genesis chapter 1, he says after their own kind. If you count, he says it 10 times. After their own kind. If you take a cat and you mix it with a cat, you get a cat. If you take a cat, you mix it with a dog, and you get a what? You get nothing, because they can't mix. That's the true statement. You see what I'm saying? So nothing goes from one species to the next. So as you start looking at that, look at the name of the alligator. Is that not the same alligator?
No.
One's a bone and one's a fossil. It's the same alligator. You go, well, that nose piece in the middle, you know, there's not a split there. Well, I don't know. That's not really that strong, so it probably got broke and disappeared. But one's a fossil and one's not, and you know what? They look like alligators. So why is my genus and species different? Iguana, same thing happens. Look at this lizard. Is that not the same lizard? I like how he put the skeleton on top. I asked him for this because I was like, how do I get those pictures? It's perfect. Modern amphibians are found in rock layers with dinosaurs. Look, if evolution was true, the modern amphibian would not be in those layers. But yet, is that not a frog? Is that not a salamander? Or a newt? I mean, you know, whichever one of those water lizards you want to pick. I mean, you start looking. The fish are in the fossil layers with the dinosaurs. So you find, look, you see the manta ray, you see the stingray, you see the shark, you see the fish. Look, they're all in there. They sit there and they start saying, hey, the modern shark and the ancient shark. You want to know why? Y'all saw that megalodon shard up here? I don't have a full, large tooth. There's a lot of people, there's people that find them. We haven't found one yet over the years of hunting for shark's teeth. But there's a fair size one. That one's a replica. But this is the biggest one we found, but it was broken. But that shark doesn't exist anymore. Can I help you out with something? Man doesn't like things that eat him, so he kills them. You know, so you start thinking about that. Look, man's going to get rid of some things. Why does man kill dinosaurs? Because they're big and scary. You know, when we lived in Montana, the Montanans, when they got up there, the wolf that was up there was a medium-sized wolf, and it's basically the same as the Canadian wolf, and it decimated livestock. So in the early 1900s, the people went out and decimated the entire population of wolves and got rid of them. And then about 20 years ago, man decided the wolf needed to be back in the area, so he brought in the timber wolf that was 3 times the size of the original wolf that was in the area, and now it's decimating everything because man's messing with stuff. And sooner or later, they'll decide they don't need it anymore, and they'll go in there and kill it. Why? Because it's dangerous. You know, what do we do when we walk out in our yard and we see a snake? If we got kids, we go kill the snake. So, you know, why don't you see those big animals anymore? Well, it's easier to find a big animal than it is a small one. So you start looking, look at that fish. It's the same thing. Why is it that, remember, this whole thing is about what are they saying? The genus and the species are different, and it shouldn't be. The modern fossils of modern birds are found with the dinosaurs. Now remember, go to a museum and you find a fossil. Look, they got fossils of birds and dinosaurs together, but what they do is they don't display them. Because if they display them, then all of a sudden, hey, that doesn't work out. See, then you guys can start questioning. So they pick and choose what they put out. But notice these birds. It's all the same birds. What kind of birds are they? Real birds. Modern mammals are found in the rock layers with dinosaurs. Look at these. Are those monkeys? Absolutely. Look, they're not missing links, people. Not missing links. So you start looking, here you start looking at plants. Look, modern plants, flowering plants, are in with the dinosaurs. They actually wrote that there are no flowering plants until after the dinosaurs. That's not true. When you look at their timelines, it doesn't work out with what's found in the fossil record. Dinosaurs perished around the time of the first flower. This Carl Sagan guy, if you ever listen to him, oh my goodness, this guy's like liar, pants on fire. So then you look at a dinosaur era magnolia. It's different. It's not different than the modern day magnolia. It's the same magnolia leaf. A fossil leaf, a dinosaur layer, and a flowering walnut. Same leaf. Flowering leaf in the dinosaur layer, there's the same flower. You start looking at, look, there's a maple, there's an oak, they're all in there. So, look, as you go through, look, you'll find everything you need to know that it all existed at the same time. The tube worm, these are kind of cool to find. Flowering polar, redwood, as you go, look, what Americans believe, 16% believe in pure evolution, 38% believe in evolution and God, and 40% believe in creation. But think about what it says there. There's more people that believe in evolution, because you really can't have God in evolution. I mean, we can act like we care, but we want to have God in it, but we really don't. So the majority of the people believe in evolution. And look, that's a poll in 2010. Take that poll now. Oops, I'm going backwards. Dr. Warner found fossil examples from all major invertebrate phyla living today. He found fossil examples from all the vertebrates groups living today. Found fossilized examples from all 7 major plant divisions living today. Concluded that animal and plant life did not change significantly. I love the way he finds the beetle and he puts it in a position to look like the fossil. You can't go wrong there. So what do we know by this? Look, what we know is that how can he, at this point, remember, what did he set out to do? Prove evolution, right? That's what his friend told him. And what did he do? Failed. All he could do is prove creation. But see, the good thing about Dr. Warner was he's looking for the truth. So he ended up writing these 2 books, and they're phenomenal. I mean, we got to come down to the end to say, hey, this is something serious. When you go, take your kids to a natural history museum. But remember, when you're looking at the fossils, take down the names, snap a quick picture on your cell phone. When you get to the far side, when you're going through the ages and you get to the new ages and you find something the same, show your kid the picture you snapped before and notice the name difference. That's where you get your kids to see the truth. Why is it that they had to make up a whole nother name? Why did they have to get out of the genus? Why didn't they at least stay in the genus? It's obvious it's the same genus. You're telling me, Doc, don't get upset with me. You're telling me you went to 8 years of college and you can't even pass kindergarten? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's just ridiculous. A beetle's a beetle. And so when we look at that, you got to think about that. Look, we got to let our children know the truth, because if they know the truth, public schools spending all the time in the world teaching your kids all the lies to get them against God. That's what they're doing. So you got to take the time that you have to show them different. You look at, remember these charts. I mean, it's crazy. When you start looking at this, listen, I don't know if you guys remember last year I did the one on the effects of evolution on American society. If you look at that, the crime rate goes up, the divorce rate goes up, the single mom rate goes up, the suicide rate goes up. Why? Because all of a sudden we're animals. But here's the problem. Though we have a heart and lungs and everything that animals have, though we have the same stuff that mammals have, the one thing we have that they don't have is the Spirit. We are made in the image of God. We are body, soul, and spirit. Father, Son, and Holy Ghost. We are not animals. And so, listen, evolution is trying to prove that we're animals, and if we think we're animals, we're going to do what? Act like animals. That's why crime rates are up. Any questions? All right, we're going to take a 10-minute break, and then Doc is going to talk about the... Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say that Living Fossils is a 2 DVD set.
Right, it is a DVD now.
In addition to the book, there's DVD.
Right, you can get the first DVD is called the Grand Experiment. The second DVD is called Living Fossils Grand Experiment. Awesome DVDs, if you know, instead of reading it to your kids. Yeah, you can get it on Amazon. Yeah, but it's Dr. Werner. I got the information if you need it. You just let me know. But yeah, no, his DVDs were great. I liked his book.